Greetings and welcome to Nathan Isle Official. This is my personal channel where I do vlogs, reviews, and anything else that happens to catch my fancy. I know I said yesterday that I wasn't going to do another video in 2024, and that the one I was going to do was a different one, but that one's going to take a long time to edit, and I had a flash of brilliance this morning about a quick video I could do. This is an experiment. I'm trying something new. Depending on the engagement, we could come back and expand on this universe. But for now, I just wanted to do a quick retrospective on the greatest halfback to ever play in the NFL. And before we get started, the two things you need to know are that, one, even though 2024 is almost over, I'm still playing Madden 2012 on the PS3. Also, yes, I do play on all Madden, in case you're curious. So when Exil Pierce was drafted, he was a third-round pick, and he was one of 3 halfbacks drafted that year. Our defense was pretty solid, so we were focusing heavily on offense. I got 10 draft picks, and I used them all on offense. 3 QBs, 3 halfbacks, 4 wide receivers. We wanted to make sure this shit was solid. We went into the preseason with 4 halfbacks, 3 of them rookies, 1 of them a second year. One of those rookies would get cut before the regular season started, and the second year would end up getting hurt. So we had 2 rookies, Exil Pierce and Garif Aaron, who were sharing carries. And for the first half of the year, they were pretty much even. They'd get 11 to 14 carries a game, and they were both averaging around 74 yards a game. One day, Exil gets the first 20-yard carry of his career, finishes the game with the first 100-yard game of his career, and he slowly starts getting slightly more carries than his counterpart. And then by the time Collins comes back from his lengthy injury, Exil has taken control of the team. He is now the lead halfback, and we are now a run-heavy offense. He would finish his rookie season with 1,600 yards and 11 touchdowns. Missed out on the Pro Bowl, but he was one of the best halfbacks in the league that year. His second year, we weren't actually planning on having a prime back. I'd been using multi-back systems primarily for years, but Exil ended up just being too damn good. The moment he cemented himself as the guy for the team was in a game versus the Colts. He had a career high 44 carries for 240 yards and 4 touchdowns, including the game-tying touchdown to send us to overtime and the game-winning touchdown in overtime. And he did all that despite suffering from back spasms in the first quarter. He had 3 fumbles that year. 2 of them were in that game. This man fought through back spasms to deliver a career high. He became the face of the franchise after that game. Exil Pierce would finish the year with 1,900 yards. He'd get his very first Pro Bowl. But what's significant about that is that he actually got hurt and he did not play the last 4 games of the season. He had 1,900 yards despite not playing the last month of the season. And the MVP would go to Arian Foster, who sets a new record with 2,247 rushing yards, despite the fact that he was averaging less yards per game than Exil Pierce at the time of Exil's injury. It's important to the story. We would end up going to the Super Bowl that year and losing it at the last second. We were holding on to a slim lead. We come down to 3rd and 6. We're already after the 2-minute warning. We got like 1:33 left. Exil Pierce was running to the flats. I decided, hey, this guy's wide open. Let me throw it to him. He slipped. Right after the ball flew out of the QB's hand, Exil just fell to the ground, and the safety came up behind him, slid down, and caught the ball before it hits the ground. And that would lead to their game-winning touchdown pass. So while I do love Exil Pierce, and he is one of the best halfbacks to ever step foot on a football field, at least digitally speaking, he is a one-trick pony with hands like stone who can't run a route for shit. So after the previous season was exciting but overall ended in disappointment, the whole team came back with a renewed vigor, and Exil Pierce would play 15 games that year. Why 15? Because in week 17, we were undefeated and everything was clinched, and he already had the record So we decided to sit his ass for the final week. He played 15 games, and he finished with 2,300 rushing yards and 35 touchdowns. And that 35 touchdowns is so fucking amazing in its own right, but even more amazing when you consider the fact that I have yet to replicate it with anybody. No one. There have been multiple people in this and other franchises who have gotten to 30 touchdowns. In fact, I have one franchise where Adrian Peterson is my primary halfback, and he got 2 straight years with 34 touchdowns. No one has ever gotten that 35th, and Exil did that in 15 fucking games. Exil would win league MVP, and then he would go on to the Super Bowl and to get 235 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns to get his first, last, and only Super Bowl MVP. Following year, Exil would come out of the gate on fire. He would get to 1,000 yards 8 games into the season, and unfortunately, he would get injured after week 10. 10 games he played that year, but he still managed to be one of the top halfbacks in the league with 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns in only 10 games. The following year, Exil Pierce would come back and have 2,100 rushing yards and 18 touchdowns, becoming the first player to have 2,000 yards in 2 separate seasons, which is incredibly impressive considering the fact that he got injured in week 15 and did not play the last 2 games of the season. Also, adding to the reason why this is impressive is because the man's overall is a 76. It peaked at 76. It hit that number and it never moved. That's the most frustrating thing about this edition of the game, is with the development. If you're not a first or second year player, then and especially if you don't have an A rate, like an A potential, even if you have a record-breaking year, the most you can do is like, hey, we'll give you 1 or 2 points for awareness, and that's that. So he hit 76 overall and never moved. But despite having such a low overall, the motherfucker was putting up numbers. Okay? Who cares what your stats say? As long as you're producing on the field. That's what's important, and this man continued to produce on the field. This man would come back from injury and break his own record, getting 2,500 rushing yards, winning league MVP for the 2nd year in a row. 2 straight years with 2,000 rushing yards, and 2,000 rushing yards in 3 out of 4 years, and 3 out of 4 years winning league MVP. And his overall dipped. Not a fuck ton, but it did dip slightly. He got slower. But he still managed to get 2,000 yards the following season, despite the fact that we got a new rookie halfback that we drafted in like the 6th round. He was just supposed to be a spellback, but that guy ended up with 1,300 rushing yards. So 3 straight years with 2,000 rushing yards, and then he comes into the 8th season of his career with an incredibly low overall, but he's still effective. He gets 1,900 yards and 29 rushing touchdowns, despite the fact that, once again, he got injured. He got hurt in week 17, the first play of the game. We hand him the ball, he carries it about 6 yards, he gets hurt. He's not an injured reserve, but he's unable to finish this game, and his backup comes in and gets 272 yards, a franchise record for a single game, and ends up finishing the year with his first 2,000-yard performance. We had 2 halfbacks combining for nearly 4,000 yards. So yeah, the following offseason, Exil's overall would dip below 70, and his speed would dip below 90. So, we'd release him, and he's just spent the year sitting in free agency, while my new guy that replaced him, Cameron Doyle, would set a franchise record with 2,800 rushing yards, which is not a league record because we've had 2 separate seasons where a halfback got 3,000 yards in a single season. This game has come unglued, and it's all my fault. We became a run-heavy team, and we literally ran our star halfback into the ground, but we kept winning, and it seems like every other team in the league started following our formula. So now last season, there were 22 different halfbacks who had 2,000 yards in a season, and a few of them were on the same team. Also, Cameron brings much more versatility because he had more receptions and yards in his first year as a starter than Exil had in his entire career. So yeah, that's it for this video. It's just a random thing I decided to do today. I mean, depending on the engagement it gets, if we could do more. I mean, there's definitely a lot to expand upon with this franchise alone. This has been my favorite franchise that I've ever played, as evident by the fact that I've done more than 10 seasons with this franchise. It's too long, but I'm so invested now. I'm going to play it until this game stops working, which honestly is kind of on its last gas. I'd be shocked if it's still working in 2026, but as long as it is still working, I'm going to keep playing it. Anyways, until the next time you see my face, my name is Nathan Lyle. Have a great day, week, month, year, however long it is.
You smoked all of it, didn't you?
I have to film this real quick and add it in at the end because I completely forgot to mention that Exil Pierce finished his career having played for 8 seasons and averaged 2,000 yards a season and finished with more career rushing touchdowns than Emmitt Smith.